I am here with my guest, Kim Zicopula. She's the Director of Marketing and Public Relations at Hospitality Family. This is a restaurant group that supports 8 restaurant locations, again, across 4 different brand concepts. So, never a dull day in Kim's life, especially in a scenario where it's as lean as you can get from a team standpoint. You got a lot of stuff going on, and I'd love to kind of unpack how you're playing this game so effectively in that scenario. So, Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, for those that aren't in the Richmond area, give us an understanding. What are these concepts? How are they different from each other? Give us an understanding of the suite of products you have available here.
Sure. So we're based in Richmond, Virginia. Our flagship concept is the Boathouse, which is more of an upscale seafood brand that's been around since the late 80s. And we have 4 locations across Richmond. 3 of them are on waterfronts. So they have, the monopoly on great dining views here in the city, which, is very popular, especially this time of year as the weather starts to warm up. So that's our flagship concept. We have also Costa del Barco, which is a Mexican concept. So obviously very different from upscale seafood. 2 locations there, great, vibrant, regionally inspired food. And what we mean by that is we take our chefs on, discovery trips to Mexico, and they get some immersive training in learning the cuisine, and get to cook alongside Mexican chefs. And then we bring back the lessons that we've learned on those trips back to our concept here. So very cool. I like to tell people about our margarita because it is a traditional recipe. We don't use a mixer. We don't use, something that's bottled. We juice like a case of limes every day. And so it's made with fresh lime juice, a little bit of agave. So you can't get a more authentic margarita here in Richmond. Then we have Island Shrimp Co. We have 1 location there, also on the waterfront. This is our island-inspired cuisine, so lots of focus on really vibrant, bright flavors. Of course, rum plays a central part in our cocktail menu. And with it being right on the water, you get this really cool vacation vibe when you're there. So it's a beautiful place to relax and listen to some live music on the waterfront. And most recently, we acquired Can Can Brasserie, which is a Richmond staple. It's been around since 2005. It is, in every sense of the word, a very beautiful traditional French brasserie. So you've got, the gold ceiling, everything feels very opulent. We try to reflect that in our menu and our cocktails as well.
Wow. I'm it's not quite lunchtime here, but that gets you going.
Yeah.
So, Kim, what do you get paid to do? Like, what's your mandate there? How would you describe it?
I think if I were to try to summarize my job in one word, it's to entice people to dine with us. And that's really it. So my role as director of marketing and PR really spans all of our public facing messaging. So everything you see on the digital side with social media, email, that sort of thing, managing our websites as well. And then the more traditional stuff, so stuff you see in stores, printed materials. I also design our menus and work on like the menu rollout process in close partnership with our corporate chef and beverage director. So there's a lot of strategy actually behind menu creation, which is a lot of fun to learn. And then on the PR side, I manage our partnerships with local media partners, influencers, anything that, touches the public in a more, widely distributed way really is my job to manage as well. So it's lots of moving parts.
Yeah. What do you rely on most to be able to tell you whether or not you're doing a good job or creating impact? Maybe it's not necessarily like a report, but what do you feel like? What's a more gut felt indicator that, you know what, I'm doing a darn good job?
Okay. I think we spend a lot of time looking at reviews. There are numerous review sites that you can look to as a restaurant owner and operator and marketer. We try to look really at the ones where we can't solicit reviews. So Open Table, for instance, they send every diner that comes through the door a survey. And so we put a lot of stock into that because it's not us asking the guest a favor. So we track that closely. There is a report involved, and we've been tracking it since we started using Open Table. And to see our review score average go up year over year is a really big indicator that not only am I helping to bring people in, but our teams at the store are also performing really well. And it really is a big team effort. I I'm on the public facing side, but I can't do what I do unless the stores are also doing their part and being hospitable to guests and kind of living up to our promise of giving people a great dining experience.
I love it. How do you fulfill your mandate when you're in a scenario where you really need to be organized and prioritized and how do you play this game as a team of one?
Yeah, well, I work from home. I think that helps a lot because otherwise I'd have to pick a favorite location or move around a lot. With our restaurants, all eight of them being in different parts of town, I choose to not drive around because it's a lot of time away from my desk. So I am fortunate that I can do this work remotely. I do go into stores, when I need to touch base with the managers there and work on some marketing priorities. But otherwise, I'm home. I'm really good at being a remote worker. I use Monday.com as my productivity platform, and it has, I think, revolutionized how I work because it's new to me in this role, and it really does keep me organized. And so shout out to Monday. It's a great tool. But I have a very real grasp on the things that we're working on in the moment. So right now it's spring. We're opening up our patios across all of our locations. And so, I learned I have to pivot this time of year. I'm really focused on outdoor messaging. And then also looking a few months down the road, we've got holidays coming up. So I think just keeping tabs on all of the things that we have to offer all the time helps me kind of prioritize messaging, but also the way that I work on things too.
Love it. What are your top two or three challenges that you think about often? Maybe you've solved them, maybe you haven't, but what kind of keeps you up at night, for lack of a better term that's overused?
Yeah, you touched on it. I am a team of one. When I came to the company, I did have a full-time coordinator, and when she left for another opportunity, we made a choice to kind of test this out as a very lean marketing organization. I don't think you can get more lean than I am. So I think my biggest challenge is just time. There are a lot of moving parts, a lot of tasks to do. And so juggling all of those things, not letting any plates drop that are spinning at all times is my biggest challenge. So I think being a good prioritizer is a way that I try to address that. But sometimes there just aren't enough hours in a day to do all the things that I do. Um, so that's challenge number one for sure. I think challenge number two is marketing for four brands means I have to switch between four different voices every single day. I touch every brand every day of my job. So, really paying attention to messaging and being true to the brand identity is something that's challenging. I don't think it keeps me up at night, but it does keep me on my toes for sure.
So how do you do that when you say switching hats and kind of syncing yourself? You mentioned earlier that you do a pretty good job in terms of making the main thing at any one point in time, focus. But what are some of the tips you would give other lean marketing departments in terms of when they're in a scenario where they have to shift the persona and the mindset and how do you do that?
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time working on identifying our brand uniques. So each of our four concepts are very different. And, as a team, we literally sat down one day and said, what makes each of these concepts unique? Unique to each other, but also unique within our market here in Richmond. And so for the Boathouse, for instance, we've got the waterfront dining. We've got oysters that we source locally here. You'll eat an oyster at the Boathouse that was just picked out of the water that morning. And so I think that, that closeness to our oyster farmers is something that makes us very unique. And we put a lot of emphasis on service there. So I think when you take the time to really think about your brand and what makes it unique, you can put a sticky note on your laptop and just remind yourself of that daily. So as you're toggling between different brands and I decide to work on a boathouse project for today, I remind myself of what's unique about it. And then that kind of informs the way that I speak about it moving forward.
Right. You referenced a decision that was made once the your old colleague left. The decision being that we're going to go as lean as possible here. What went into that decision, and why is it the right decision for you guys today?
I think part of it was timing. When I came to hospitality family, it was just after COVID was starting to go away. I don't know that it was fully gone yet. But as you know, the restaurant industry took a beating during COVID. And so, I think there were some strategic decisions we had to make across the company, as far as resources and trying to recover from how hard that was, with atmosphere being such a big part of what we do. Having closed restaurants was just really hard for us. And so, we made that decision. We said, we need to kind of be careful with our resources as we're coming out of this and as we're charting a new path forward. I think for me, being newer to the company, I really wanted the opportunity to dig deep into all the things that we do. I have a background in marketing that goes back a few years, and I don't think they had someone in this role with that experience. And so I took the opportunity to really just, put all the parts on the lawn and say, how have we done marketing historically? What are the gaps that we've seen? What are the things that we're doing well? And, it's allowed me to really focus on creating strategy across the board because I am the only person doing it. It kind of forced me into it, which has been a good thing.
Right. So you're playing the role well and dealing with the now my question is if you were given the opportunity, would you prefer, because you can really organize yourself really well and you have a good ability to kind of toggle between strategy and tactical, would you
Mhm.
prefer that world, or would you prefer the challenges and I guess the opportunities that come along with managing a team of people? Where's your preference lie now that you've experienced both in your career?
Yeah, I think at some point, I would love to have a team again. And I think it is something that's in the future for us here. I love managing people. I don't really see it as managing. I feel like there's kind of a negative connotation to that word, and I don't know why. But I love having a team. I love, having people to bounce ideas off of. I like the development aspect of it, of having people I can help further, in their career. So I am certainly open to it. And I think with as much as I'm managing, it's going to be a necessity at some point.
Right.
That will free me up to focus on broader strategic priorities like corporate partnerships, that sort of thing. So, as we continue to evolve as a company, I do see a marketing team forming, alongside that.
Within the local area and sort of the competitive environment, give us an understanding of where do the four brands sort of sit? Like, is it very competitive there, and you're trying to find an edge here and there, or is based on the years of establishment of these brands, you kind of are dealing with a different deck of cards as compared to some of the. Tell us about the fight that you fight every day as it relates to the competitive environment there.
Yeah, restaurants in Richmond are huge. I mean, there are new restaurants opening all the time. We are a very food focused city here. I think it was recently named one of the top travel destinations in the US, and the food scene is a big part of that. We do have the advantage of having been around for so long, with our flagship concept around since the 80s, we have a foothold in the industry here. And we've built up a reputation over time. A big part of that is with the boathouse specifically. We have a big weddings division with waterfront properties. They're hotspots for weddings, and so we've been able to branch out into other areas of business that have helped us be sustainable and to reach our guests in new ways. So we've got people dining with us every day, but we've also got people hosting weddings and graduation parties with us. Almost every day it seems like. So I think we have a lot of things that make us unique. I would say with Island Shrimp Co. being an island themed restaurant in Richmond, it's pretty unique. There's not many of those kinds of concepts around here, and so we've been able to kind of carve out a niche for us specifically, with that flavor profile, which has been a lot of fun. And then with acquiring Can Brasserie at the end of last year, we have stepped into a well-respected establishment. We've kind of, made very, very few changes to it, especially on the food and drink side. But, we focus more on the operations and just making sure it's humming along nicely. And we've got it open to 7 days a week where it hadn't been for a while. And so I think there's a combination of being established, a combination of having newer, innovative concepts, and then, looking for opportunities to invest in things that are Richmond staples. Or it's kind of been a good trifecta for us.
Is there something about the group that originally sort of called you and brought you and that is now keeping you there? Like, is it a leadership thing? Is it a culture thing? Like, what if you can play the game you're playing at a lot of different places? Why is this where you choose to sort of hang your hat?
Well, I do love first and foremost, it is a family-owned business. So it still is. It started out that way in the 80s. Kevin Healy is the owner of the company who founded our company, and he's still very involved, but he's brought, the next generation of Healys in. And so he's got, three children that are very, very involved in the business. They are super bright. They, love eating at restaurants and are very active in the dining scene. And so they come with a ton of ideas and perspective, which has been, it's been really great for us. I am one of the few who came into the company from outside. Most of our leadership team, there's 12 or 13 of us, have been with the company since, they were busboys or servers in the restaurant, and they just came up and, elevated to the leadership team. And so there's a lot of historical knowledge that is helpful to me as kind of an outsider. But then they've appreciated and embraced kind of my perspective as well, having worked in other industries. And so it's a fun place to work. We're very lean as a leadership team. And because of that, we're very honest with each other and we challenge each other to think better and do better. And so I think on a professional level, it's been very rewarding for me to be around so many smart and innovative people. But also personally, it's just a lot of fun to work with people who are so invested in it too.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about the dynamics around you and the leadership team and the way you guys race to conflict, it kind of sounds like, and have difficult conversations, but you support each other and you respect each other. Like, tell me
Yeah.
about that. And why is it so important from a marketing leader standpoint to, from your perspective, immerse yourself in the greater sort of like, what are we trying to do as an organization and how does working together? Just give us a sense of that. You're intermingling within that leadership team.
Yeah, I think the thing that we do well is we are very honest with each other and we remind each other why we're here. So our tagline as a company is celebrate life one bite at a time. And so we challenge ourselves as our department heads, how are we contributing to that mission? And we remind ourselves of that frequently. We have a weekly pulse meeting every Tuesday where each of us talks through kind of our workload, our priorities for the week. There's a lot of overlap with that. So I mentioned I do the menu work for our restaurant group. So I have to work with our corporate culinary director and our beverage director. And, with that, it's encouraged us to really just rely on each other as teammates. We also do quarterly strategic meetings where we lock ourselves in a room all day and we
Mhm.
do a lot of reflection and a lot of looking back on what we've done well across the last quarter or the last year, and then looking ahead, we set very concrete goals yearly, 3 years out, 5 years out, and we all commit to it and come up with those goals together. And so I think knowing who's in charge of what, and then owning what you're in charge of, and just knowing how you're contributing to our greater mission has really helped us gel as a team.
Hmm. I love that. It's always it's always difficult when there's disintegration and sort of siloed approaches, especially in a scenario where you're responsible for setting the strategy, doing the execution. Like if you can't be together,
Mhm.
it's a tough spot. But it doesn't sound like that's the case there. For you, even in our initial call when we first got to meet each other, and now there's there's this sense of calm that I pick up on it, and I am genuinely curious. Like, what is it? Is it some sort of superpower that you rely on because it's ingrained, it's innate within you that allows you to keep steady? Maybe
Mhm.
it's a facade, but I get the sense that it's very that how do you what sets you up so well to play this role, leading a function in a lean scenario, integrated with the leadership team and really uh, celebrating the uniqueness of the brands. How do you do that and keep so steady?
Well, it's not a facade. I will say, regardless of where you meet me, this is how I am. So the grocery store, at work, at my son's soccer games, like I am the same person. So it's intentional. I've done a lot of self-work. I think this is something that we owe ourselves as professionals, but we also owe it to the people in our life is to really practice radical self-reflection. And so that's something I've spent the majority of my life doing. And I've learned it through a lot of reading. Like you can tell, I love to read. So I choose to read things that help me understand how to become a better person. And with that, I think when you're confident in who you are, you can't help but maybe radiate a little bit of calmness because I don't have things that are stressing me out like they used to. I don't have the anxiety that I used to, and it's intentional. It's something I've worked on. I also, with work, juggling as much as I do, I always come from a place of gratitude. I understand how lucky I am to have the job that I do. I get to go and take pictures of food and cocktails, and then I get to eat and drink those things. I don't have a high stress job. I'm not curing cancer. I'm not doing something that's, putting someone's life at risk. And so I can kind of relax a little bit in my work and focus on the fun, focus on the things I'm grateful to do. I think about my job as a marketer, of course, is to let people know that we're here, but I also think about it from the perspective of, oh, I created something that brought someone in and then they ended up having a really wonderful, memorable experience with their family. And so I think being connected to your mission, outside of numbers, outside of, what our sales goals are, but really on the kind of emotional side has really helped keep me focused and calm because at the end of the day, I feel good about what I'm doing. And I drink an extraordinary amount of coffee, so you wouldn't think I'd be as calm as I am, but it's just kind of how I've been, and I think it served me well in a role like this.
Besides the coffee and the reading, is there anything that that sort of represents a daily routine or something that you'd be willing to share? Have you, or is it just kind of not routine based? It's more random. Like, how do you plan the day?
Yeah, I will say the one thing that I do consistently every day and at the end of my day is I always look back on my day. As I approach the weekend, I look back on the week. Um, I practice radical self-honesty. So as I'm thinking about things that maybe I said something in the meeting and it came across wrong, I take time to think about that, and then I then think about the way it made me feel, and I try to remove my own bias from it. So I look at those situations as if it were someone else doing it. So I said something, in a meeting that came across wrong. How would I want another person to handle that? How would I want them to internalize that or make good on it if it was something to apologize for? And luckily I haven't messed up that bad, but I do practice a lot of self-reflection. I think when you make it a habit, you can eventually get to a point where you are honest with yourself and you're able to take the emotion out of it and just really analyze, what the actions were, how they made you feel. And then if it's something that you want to change about yourself or a situation, then when you understand it, you can do that. And so that is something I do religiously every day. You can journal it. I don't journal it because I'm really bad at being consistent with journaling, but I always take that time at the end of the day to just sit in quiet and think. Um, at the start of my day, I look at my calendar for the day, I look at my calendar for the week. I pick out the things that I know will take me the shortest amount of time and I knock those out first. And
Okay.
it's amazing how ahead I get of my week when I do that, when I remember to do that. But other than that, I'm someone who thrives on being busy. So I have this very full role that I have at my company. I also have I work in freelance work. So I have a side project I work on and I manage my son's soccer team. So I choose to fill my
Jeez.
time with a lot of things. And I like to call it controlled chaos. But what I know about myself is if I get bored or feel stagnant, it's just not good for me. And so I fill my time. And I think that helps me stay focused, oddly enough.
Very cool. The setup, it's all in the setup, isn't it? You can be successful when it's so what's your Achilles heel as a marketing leader, as a professional? Something that you'd be willing to admit that, hey, I'm working on this. It doesn't serve me today.
Yeah, I think the one thing I've had to really let go of is and understand is that I can't control how people react to things. And so, from a marketing perspective, if we post something and it doesn't resonate with people and it gets fewer likes or, fewer interactions, I can't take that personally. It's just what did I do, messaging wise that was different and how do I fix it for next time? You have to really accept that you're not for everyone. I think that's very true in the restaurant industry. Eating and flavors and taste buds are very subjective, and we could put out the best oyster you've ever had, but if you don't like raw oysters, you're not going to come and eat raw oysters. And so I think accepting that you do the best you can to, tell your story, and maybe people will come in and it'll resonate with them, and being okay with that and not feeling like you have to win over every single person that you've ever reached out to or come in contact with, I think is a very healthy way um, to kind of approach this work. And it took a long time for me to come to that, acceptance.
Yeah. Wow. So, I'm curious, how do you, is there anything specific you do from a marketing standpoint to sort of keep yourself sharp and on the edge on your developmental edge? Like within all of the responsibilities, accountabilities you got to do, you're managing the soccer team, where do you, how do you kind of contribute to the tomorrow version of Kim, the marketing leader? Is there courses, books? What is it? How do you keep yourself sharp?
I do try to seek out a certification every couple of years at least. It's been probably two, maybe three since I earned my last one. It was through the Digital Marketing Institute. And so I look for these certifications that are more deep dive into the strategy and technical side of marketing. And if they resonate with me and they look interesting, I'll seek those out. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I think if you are following the right people, there's a ton of perspective and insight that you can get from that community. And so there are people who work in restaurant marketing that are very generous with their data and their perspectives and their lessons learned on LinkedIn. And so I spent a lot of time kind of sifting through all of that and picking out the challenges that resonate with me and seeing how others have solved it. And if I don't know something, I Google it. Google's amazing. And so I recently had a challenge where I said, our engagement on social media is not what it used to be. Like, what's going on here? And so I went down a Google rabbit hole and found some articles and case studies about algorithm changes, and was like, oh, I was putting links in Facebook posts, and apparently that's not a good thing anymore. And so I think being proactive about trying to find information to solve your challenges is a big part of it. But there are a ton of resources out there, and I love to learn and read, like I said, so certifications are fun for me.
You guys like this. I see that. I see that you're a constant learner. Imagine that you're talking to another marketing leader, same situation as you, single man or woman team, and maybe they're struggling a little bit to find that balance between strategy and tactical and integration with the rest of the team. What words of advice would you give these one person marketing team leaders?
Um, I think just taking a step back and looking at your broader goals and your larger mission, I think you can kind of cut out a lot of the noise when you intentionally do that. And so, you know, analyze what you're spending your time on every day. Is it serving, the end goal or the mission at the end of the day? If not, you can spend less time on it. Maybe
Right.
deprioritize that. If it's time sensitive, are there other things that you can set aside to meet a deadline that suddenly sprung up on you? And that happens in my world a lot. Like I'll get word that we're having to change a menu next week, and those things usually take me a couple weeks to do. But I think as long as I am looking at my work and saying this is the thing I have to do, because if not, I feel like I won't live out our mission for this week. I won't deprioritize that. That stays at the top of my list. But there are a lot of other smaller things that can wait. So being honest about your workload and the things you're spending your time on is a big help for me.
I love it.
Mm.
Well, thank you very much for giving us a glimpse into how you're playing this game. I think you're playing it just about as well as I've ever seen in a scenario. It's a one person team. The calmness, the what keep the main thing, differentiating strategy and execution, integrating with the team from a leadership standpoint, and being able to do so with like this sense of gratitude and enjoyment and passion and fun, and remembering that we're not curing cancer, right? But we can be effective when we're reflective, and we can be effective when we're kind to ourselves in terms of non-judgmental. I didn't get this done. All of these lessons are so critical for marketing leaders that have big teams to no team. And I just think that you're playing it really, really well. So sharing your experiences is super valuable, and I appreciate it.
It was great to be here and great to talk to you today.
Everyone, my guest, Kim Zicopula, thank you so much.